Hello, welcome back to I Got Board
I
Game.
got board game.
I got board game. I am Ben,
I'm John.
and for this first review of ours of 2022,
2022.
oh man, I'm not used to saying that year yet. We are doing a review of a game that came out a few years ago now. I think it's 2019, technically 3 years, but more like 2 years. That is still going on right now, though, still releasing new stuff. And it's of a theme that some of you might be very into right now or for the last 10 years, 10, 15 years. And that game is
A game about the marvelous Miss Maisel.
Mrs. Maisel.
Woo!
Yeah, didn't know that was a game, did you?
Yeah, that's all right. That would have surprised you. But no, it is of
Marvel Champions. So yeah, big box. So Marvel Champions is a cooperative living card game, co-op LCG, as we would say. And so just a brief idea about an LCG. It is a trademark of the board game company Fantasy Flight. And essentially, I think they themselves define a living card game as kind of a variation on collectible card games that they came up with. And it's basically a game that they design that has its own system, way of playing, that has a competitive feel similar to those collectible or trading card games, but it avoids the whole randomized booster add-on expansion aspect of it. So when you play any LCG that they produce, which they've done several of them over the years, including Android Netrunner, which I've mentioned a few times on this channel, a Game of Thrones LCG, Lord of the Rings, Call of Cthulhu, Star Wars. Yeah, there's a lot of big IP ones that they've done. For all those games, they all play differently. They all have their own system, and we'll get into Marvel Champion system in a bit. But then they all have a bunch of expansion packs released basically every few months that add a bit more content to the base game. But none of them are randomized boosters as you would encounter with a collectible card game. So there's no collecting, no rarity to cards. Every time you buy one of the small expansion packs, they all come with the set same cards. So you're just always adding the new cards. Then you have everything you need to play and are up to date on it. So that's how the living card game model works by Fantasy Flight. But going into Marvel Champions, in this summary review video, we are going to do a brief overview of how the game generally flows and then share our weight guessing from John, not our weight, John guessing the weight and our ratings for the game so far. And you can check for more details on pros and cons and those specifics in our detailed review video separate from this one. And so getting into the general overview of how the game plays, let me share with you a picture of how the game will look like when it's set up. And so hopefully you guys can see that. And so Marvel Champions is a game where it is a co-op game. So even though it has kind of the depth and deck construction that you can do in a trading card game, it is co-op. So you're not playing each other. You're working with your other players to play against a certain villain or scenario that you choose in the beginning. And so the way the game will get set up is everyone will choose one of the Marvel heroes in the game, which consists of their own hero cards, and mix it with the cards of a certain aspect. And an aspect can be thought of as kind of like a role or archetype in a kind of game or video game. You know, you have aggression, which is kind of the fighting type. You have protection, which is more defensive. Justice and leadership. So there's 4 different aspects. So you'll just choose one, take those cards and mix it, shuffle it with your own heroes cards. And that's how you have your deck. Each hero also has their own nemesis card, which will be taken out. You'll maybe come across them while you're playing. And then for the villain side of the game, you choose a villain that you will play, and they have their own villain card, and they also have their own main scheme, their plan that they're trying to pull off, and then their own deck of cards, which consists of minions, encounters or events, equipment, and other side schemes. So you would just shuffle that, set that on the side, and then you can start playing. You all have your own hit point dial for each hero, each player's own hit point dial, and then the villain's hit points. And so the way you win the game is by taking the villain down to 0 life. You lose the game generally in a couple ways. The main way is if the villain's main scheme ever reaches its full threat value. And a main scheme can actually have multiple levels. So it might reach a certain limit on its threat, or that's basically its hit points, if you will, for a scheme. And so once it reaches its max level, it might advance to level 2 of the main scheme, maybe to level 3. But ultimately, there's going to be one level where if it reaches its full threat value, you guys lose the game. The other way you can lose is if all the players die, all your heroes get knocked out, right? When all your hit points go to 0. And so the way it'll play is each round is divided into a hero phase and a villain phase. So during the hero phase, the players are going to go in turn order, and the first player will do all their actions. And then the second player and so on will do all their actions. And then it'll go to the villain, and the villain will essentially activate and kind of attack or react to each player. So during the hero phase and on a specific player's turn, you're going to have a handful of cards, which is determined by your hero, like your hand limit. And you'll basically be playing different cards from your hand, such as equipment or other allies who have their own attack and defense abilities. And you're going to be able to attack with your hero. You're also going to be able to thwart, which is a separate kind of attack in this game, because since this game has both a villain and a scheme, and that's always going to be the case, you can either choose to attack the villain or thwart the scheme, which is basically reducing the hit points on the scheme so it doesn't advance. And so, yeah, you'll be doing that on your own hero turn. And then the way you're going to pay for cards is every card has just a value in the top left, and I'll kind of zoom in on just part of this setup image so you can see a little better. You can see Spider-Man here, and one of the cards he played was this web shooter equipment, which has its own ability, but then it has a cost in the top left corner of 1. And so in this game, the resources you're paying to play any of your equipment or actions or attacks is paid by using cards in your hand. You're basically discarding cards from your hand to generate that resource to then pay for cards that you're actually playing from your hand. And so there's that kind of hand management that's always happening in the game. And so that's how you'll play cards, add cards to the board, or pay for certain event actions or special attacks you're doing. And so you're going to attack the villain or thwart the scheme, and then it'll go to the next player and they'll get to do all of those on their turn. At the end of the hero phase, after everyone's gone, you'll basically draw back up to your hand size and then switch over to the villain's phase. And on the villain phase, they start by always advancing their main scheme. So that'll always kind of move forward, kind of be like a timer in a way. And then the villain will attack or act against each player, depending on which side each player has left their hero. Because in this game, a hero can be on their hero side or their alter ego side, right? Every hero card has 2 sides. And so if a given player is on their hero side, the villain will attack them. But if they're on their alter ego side, that's when the villain will scheme instead, which is basically advancing their main scheme. And so that'll happen for both players, right? The villain could attack both players, or attack each player, or scheme against each player, or attack one, scheme against the other. It really just depends on which side each player left their hero on at the end of the hero phase. And then the villain will deal out encounter cards, or cards from their own deck, to each player. And then each player will flip over those cards and see what they do. Do they add some kind of minion, like Radioactive Man here, add a minion against that hero? Or is it a side scheme that then also has its own effect and its own kind of hit points that you'll need to thwart and defeat that way to get rid of from the game? Or is it going to be some equipment that's going to go onto the villain, making them hit harder in the future or such? Or some other kind of event, depending on the villain themselves. And so that'll happen for each player, this encounter phase. And so after you resolve each player's encounter cards that they were dealt, that's the end of the villain phase. And then you repeat this process again, going back to the hero phase. And so again, the whole point is to take the villain down to 0 hit points without their main scheme advancing enough for you guys to lose, or without you guys losing enough life to all die and get knocked out. And that's how you play Marvel Champions.
Yep.
And so with that, we are going to go on to John guessing the weight. And in this case, he's going to be guessing the weight of the base game, the one in the background of his screen right now. But a lot of what we've been saying is basically about Marvel Champions as a whole system and game in itself, which includes later expansion packs, like I mentioned, with this living card game system, which basically comes out as hero packs. You can buy individual hero packs that add specific Marvel heroes you want to play as in the game, and they have their own specific cards. Or scenario packs, which are new villains that you can play against that have their own decks and play in their own way. But for now, we're going on to John guesses the weight of the base game.
Yeah, so as Ben explained, I think it sounds like there are a lot of things that are going on in the game, but overall, I think it is a pretty easy game to pick up once you get into it. So my guess for the weight of the game is probably around 2.41.
2.41. Okay, so kind of like light to medium.
Kind of medium, light to medium. It's still on the lighter side, but it does have some complexity involved with the game. So I'm going 2.41.
Okay. And so since I'll be showing my Board Game Geek page of the game with my rating, what is your rating for the game so far right now? And a bit of your reasoning.
So I've played this game now a few times. So I remember when Ben first picked it up way back in 2019, 2020, or 2019 time when we first played the game a couple times. And then I actually stopped playing it for quite a while until more recently I started playing it on the tabletop simulator with some friends and family, getting back into it, kind of seeing all the different characters, which we'll talk about in the detailed review. But I would say that my overall rating for the game, the system, and what this game is, I would give this a 9 out of 10.
An 8?
A 9.
A 9.
9.
Sorry, I was trying to grab some of the other boxes where I said that. Okay.
Ben thought I was going to say 8, but no, I said a 9. I think it's a very, very well-made game. It captures to me a lot of the feeling of what it's like to be a superhero, or if you've ever read comics, of this kind of transition of the heroes needing to fight the villains and then the villains getting away with the scheme. And so the heroes will have to go back and switch back into their alter ego forms, recuperate, figure out a new plan before they go back and attack the villains. While in the meantime, the villains are continuing to move forward with their schemes. So a lot of this kind of play of when do you have to stay as this hero mode, when do you have to switch over to your alter ego form, and kind of prepare yourself for the next situation, which we'll get into in the detailed review. But it really captures it well. It's easy to get into. As I said, there are some very simple characters, base characters, you can just jump right into it. And I think that anyone who enjoys playing board games, if you're looking for a slightly more complicated game, but also has a theme that a lot of people now are very familiar with, thanks to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you should play this game. You should try this game out at the very least. It should be something that you've done, you play at least once.
Okay, so your rating is a 9 and your guess of the weight is a 2.41.
2.41.
And so let us look on Board Game Geek to see if how close John is to the actual weight
Ben
that
is buying
the community
a copy of
yeah, if
Marvel
I'm
King.
getting him a copy of the base game only, not everything so far.
Every expansion.
And
every hero pack.
It is a 2.86.
More heavy than I thought.
More heavy than you think. Closer to medium, as people think. So yeah, no free copy for you.
Yeah, my weight's off.
But my rating is actually also a 9, so I was surprised that you gave it a 9. And this is probably the rating I've had since I put it on one of our previous top 10 or top 5 lists. But yeah, a lot of the same reason that you mentioned. I really like the thematic feel of the game, where even though it's just a card game, it's basically all cards, right? Not like a big sprawling board game for a superhero game. You do really have that feel of being that hero that you choose to be because of how they designed every hero to play pretty differently from each other, right? And so I think that variety and how, Iron Man has to build up his suit and each piece is like a different card that does something different, to being like Captain America, whose focus is on getting his shield and his shield helping him do certain attacks. Like, it's just so clever, I think, how they can make each hero feel different, but still function in the same system that they've made for this game. I do also really like how it's cooperative. So in this game, you can very well work together, right? And actually feel like your hero, but on a team together, which is very thematic with how, the Marvel heroes are. And then I think even just the Marvel theme itself is, for a lot of people who might be into the MCU, this will be something the theme will add to their enjoyment, especially since it's more drawing from the comics. So you don't have to know the movies to understand or feel like you're that hero. But, it is still Marvel stuff, which is still huge now, still going big. So recognizable, but drawing from the comics. So it's a much bigger world that they can draw from and introduce people to more characters, more villains. And even the villains playing differently, I think, is very clever and can be very challenging at times. And I think even just before this video, we were talking about how I've been enjoying some of these deck construction games. And so I do appreciate how when you buy the base game or even each hero pack individually, like for example, let me stop sharing this. For example, like Venom, a pretty recent one, relatively recent hero, and this is what a hero pack looks like. They all just come with their own set of cards that you can literally just start playing with that hero in the game out of the box, right? So I think that all makes it very easy to jump in, right? That it's co-op, that the heroes have their own decks, that you don't even need a modify to play, but you can enjoy modifying, making even more specified, or even better decks if you are into that. So yeah, that's why I give it a 9 also. And so that is our summary review of Marvel Champions. A 9 from both of us, very high, probably the highest rating we've given in a long time.
Oh, maybe in a long time. That's true.
Yeah,
maybe a while. So, but we've given some 9s out here and there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but I imagine like we reviewed a lot of like small games
recently.
Yeah, more recently. So none of those hitting that high, right? But a beefy game like this hitting a 9. And so again, that is our summer review for Marvel Champions. If you found this interesting, helpful, hope you'll share this video with friends, family, people you play board games with. Consider subscribing to this channel and following us on I Got Board Game Instagram, right? And yeah, until next time or our detailed review video, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.